Hey, remember this series? Maybe, probably not. But don't worry if you haven't seen a previous episode because I'm rebooting the series anyways. So, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's the newest entry in the 30-plus-year-old Zelda franchise. This is one of the most anticipated games of 2017. Plus, it also launches on Nintendo's brand new console, the Switch. Well, it did also launch on the Wii U, but let's be honest here, that doesn't matter. And to be honest with you, I am all aboard the hype train as much as anyone else. But now that the game is out, we have to ask, does it live up to the hype train it created? Also, just minor spoilers ahead, proceed with caution. Disclaimer. None of the footage used in this video is my own. It's taken from Vinesauce, link in the description and at the end of the video. So let's take a look at combat. You got a sword, a shield, and a bow. Of course, there are other items that you can pick up along the way, but for a majority of the game, this is all you'll be using. I got through about 80% of the game just using a standard sword attack and the occasional shield block. At a certain point in the game, it does teach you more complex sword maneuvers, and it's probably just me, but I almost never use these techniques and got through the game perfectly fine. Well, within a margin of error. I also didn't use my shield as much as you'd think because the game loves to give you double-handed weapons, which of course don't allow you to use your shield. Luckily, because of how the game is set up, there's never really a point where you overwhelmingly need to use your shield, so I didn't have much of a difference. You're also constantly getting new weapons from enemies, from just finding them out in nature, or from random chests you find throughout the world. Now, I have heard many people complain that they don't like the weapon degradation within the game, and I guess I see where they're coming from, but honestly, I never really had a problem with it. Let's say you're fighting a group of like bokoblins. One of your swords breaks, right? You can just switch to another weapon, kill all the bokoblins, and then just steal whatever weapons they're using and use those. Because of this, you constantly have a fresh supply of weapons at your ready, and well, I know people are going to go into this game and try to hoard like the best weapons and never use them, kind of like in an RPG. I do recommend getting out of that mindset as fast as possible because it's not as big as a deal as you think. As long as you keep in mind like ideas like equivalent exchange, you'll always have weapons at the ready. Then there are bows, which work well within the game. They are gyroscopically controlled, which I can guarantee you some people will have a problem with, but honestly I don't mind. On top of that, there are a variety of arrows like fire and ice that can have great benefits if you're using them within combat scenarios. And then while you're falling off like a cliff or something, you can like pull out your bow, sheath an arrow, and you go into like a slow-mo to help you precisely aim your shot. This is actually, it's a really simple thing, but it's really cool, and I wish more games did something like this. Of course, there are other combat mechanics, like within the first few hours of the game, you'll get runes, which can be used for both puzzles and combat. For the most part, they're implemented very well, and while they work good with puzzles, in some instances, they work really well for killing enemies, and the game really does want you to take advantage of it. The exception to this rule is Cryonis, which, with the exception of a shield in very specific areas, never gets used. Overall, I felt like the combat works really well, so I'm gonna give it a great. So let's talk about difficulty. This game is goddamn difficult. My god. There are some moments in this game where I have just died and respawned over and over and over again, just fighting like the same two enemies because they're so precise where if they get a single hit on you, you die. This happens multiple times. Now, I know people are starting to hate this comparison, but the amount of times I saw the game over screen did remind me of Dark Souls. But I do still really like the difficulty, and not just because I like fair but difficult games. What I really like is that it has a very smooth difficulty curve, meaning as you grow stronger, so do the enemies. And there was never a point in the game where I really felt overpowered or underpowered. It was always well balanced. And yeah, overall, I give difficulty a great. So let's talk about the world. The world is huge. I don't know how it compares to other games, but you can definitely feel the size. The world is divided up into 15 regions, each of which has a tower that you have to climb, and at the top you get like an overview of the region. You can see the entire map on your Sheikah slate, and as you travel around the world activating towers and shrines, they act as fast travel points, which is really convenient. To actually navigate the world, you have a variety of different options. With a few exceptions here and there, if it exists, you can climb it, which, while it takes forever sometimes to climb something, and you tend to fall off a lot. Climbing anywheres is just amazing. The climbing mechanic kind of reminds me of Shadow of the Colossus, which is one of the greatest compliments I can give this game, honestly, because Shadow of the Colossus is one of the greatest games ever made. Once you're at the top of something, you can just jump off of it and activate your glider. This is so useful because it allows you to glide almost anywheres. You can also set grass on fire and create air drafts, lifting you up into the air that allows you to fly anywhere. The game also gives you access to a horse, which you can tame and you can name up to 4 horses and keep them out of stables, which allow you to move across the world. The thing is, however, even though I had multiple horses, I almost never used them and just preferred to walk everywhere. While this was a personal choice, while talking to some of my mates, I found out they basically did the exact same thing, which really isn't a problem because horses are still there and you can always pick up and ride a horse anywhere. Plus, on top of that, you're not limited to just horses. Almost any quadruped animal you can get on and ride wherever. The problem is you can't take them and name them at stables, which is kinda disappointing. Another way to get around is shield surfing, which is actually pretty useful, but if I'm being honest here, I knew this was in the game because of E3, right? I saw the footage, but I didn't actually figure out how to do it until about 30 hours in. Yeah. But yeah, overall, the world is amazing. I like how you can traverse it. It's really well done, and I'm gonna give it an amazing. So let's talk about the divine beasts, which are also the dungeons and the shrines. Throughout the game, there are over 100 shrines. For beating each shrine, you get a spirit orb, and you can take the spirit orbs to a goddess statue to get either a heart container or a stamina vessel, which boosts either your health or your stamina respectively. A lot of these shrines are actually really cool, and they really take advantage of the ruins you're given early on in the game. And because of how the game is designed, some shrines even have multiple solutions. It's really well done. And while a majority of the shrines are cool, I did find a few disappointed. Minor spoilers. There are these things called blessing shrines that simply have an item in an orb, and that's it. It's underwhelming. But usually how they work is that you have a challenge in the overworld that requires you to complete an accomplishment to get to the shrine. This I don't have a problem with, and I actually think some of these were really cool. But I swear there were times where I got to a blessing shrine where there was no challenge. It was just a free item in an orb. The other type of shrine I have a problem with is the test of strength shrines. It's simple. Just fight a strong enemy, get an orb, and a few weapons. I don't inherently have a problem with this, but when the game reuses these so many times and just makes them a little difficult every once in a while, it starts to get boring. It starts to just reappear the same shrine over and over. It is nice that you do have good weapons from them, but I wish they didn't use them as much as they did. And then there are the dungeons, which are the divine beasts. There are 4 of them, and you have to travel through them, right? There's one in each region. The thing is, I kind of find these a little underwhelming. They're not like your traditional Zelda dungeon. They work a lot differently, even though they do work some of the same. There are some cool mechanics with how you manipulate the divine beasts, but other than that, I found it disappointing. It's not bad by any means, they're just different, and at first I didn't really like it. As time went on though, I did find a few of the divine beasts that I actually thought were really cool. But for all the problems with the dungeons, the shrines easily make up for it. So yeah, overall I'm gonna give it a good. So let's talk about graphics. The game looks great. While I know it's not the best graphics in the world, they get what they need to across with very little problem. In TV mode, the game runs at 900p 30 FPS, which I know some people will complain about, but personally I had no problem with it. It looked fine. Even in tablet mode, which runs at 720p and 30 frames per second, I still think the game looks fine, and I have no complaint. I couldn't tell you about the Wii U version because I haven't played it, but I'm assuming it's about the same. Another thing is, I've heard people talk about the lag, right? How they keep getting hit by these lag spells. And personally, I didn't really experience it until I got to the Akala region. Then it was just all over the place, right? I saw them left and right, but the second I left Akala, I never had the problems again, with the exception of 1 or 2 very small moments. But as I was talking to one of my mates, he said he was having lag in Hyrule Field as he was going through the grass and whatnot, but after he left the region, he didn't have a problem again. Another mate told me he was having lag in the Lost Woods, but absolutely nowhere else. So it appears as your mileage may vary, but overall, the game looks great, so I'm giving it a great. So let's talk about the story. You wake up 100 years after some great calamity and you're told to kill Calamity Ganon. That's it in its most basic form. You're also told you have to go and find and reestablish connection with the divine beasts. It may not sound like much, but I actually got really invested. As you go around the world, you see people living their basic lives, right? They're trying to continue on. Sure, has the kingdom of Hyrule fallen? Mostly, but yet the world refuses to die. And I just love it. So I don't really want to say anything else because I don't want to spoil it, but just know I'm going to leave it here and I'm going to give it a great. So let's talk about the characters. This is where the game truly shines, and this is where I fell in love with the game. When you wake up from your 100-year slumber, you have all your memories erased. You don't remember a thing. And as you play through the game, you gain back the abilities to get your memories. At a point in the game, you unlock these pictures that show specific locations, and if you go there, you get your memories back from 100 years ago. These memories just invested me in the characters and their struggles, everything they've gone through. It's so well done. Throughout your journey, you'll also get memories of the champions, which are also great. And then there are also a healthy amount of characters in each region that do get a good bit of development, and it makes them endearing. This is also the first Zelda game which has fully voice-acted cutscenes, even though they're very few and far in between. The quality is kind of all over the place, and some are acted well, while others aren't. In my opinion, the characters with bad voice acting are actually pretty tolerable, and I didn't really have much of a problem, while the ones with great voice acting really shine. Now, I have heard people complain about Zelda and how she fits in the game and her voice acting, but I can disagree with all those complaints. I thought she was great. I can't sing her praises enough. It is amazing what they done. And it's not just amazing, it's golden. So let's talk about the music. The music is, it's there. I mean, it's integrated into the background and you're not always hearing it, which allows the game to have atmosphere. Sometimes you'll just be walking around with little to no music and just hearing the sound of nature and whatnot, and that works really well. When the tracks are there, they are pretty good. There are a few exceptions where I swear the game is just repeating the same note over and over again, and that's kind of disappointing. But on special occasions, the game will just pull out an amazing track. These are rare, but when they do it, it just sends tingles down my spine. It's so well done. But with all that taken into account, at the end of the day, I think I have to give music a good. Now, I don't know how it looks based on everything I've said in this video, but as I reached the end of the game, I was actually willing to give it a golden. Well, it probably has a lot to do with the characters. I was loving this game, and I was willing to give it the highest score I possibly could. All it needed to do was have a great ending, and it would get that final score. So I beat the game, and I liked it, but it didn't give me the payoff I wanted. I started debating with myself, and I realized the fact that I'm even having to debate means I could only give it an amazing. So I started writing the script, sat on it for a few days, and I realized something. A few days before beating the game, I realized it was inevitable. I was going to beat the game very soon, and while I knew it was inevitable, I just didn't want the game to end. Even though there's a bunch of side quests to do and Korok seeds to gather that I still haven't done, the core experience was about to end, and that kind of saddened me. I wanted for it to keep going, and that's how I'm going to justify giving it a golden. The fact that I never wanted it to end proved that everything it was doing is right, that I loved it. Overall, I am going to give Breath of the Wild a golden, the highest score I can possibly give it with the highest recommendation I can possibly give.